Everything I share with you in this video is something that you can become directly conscious of. I don't really care about having you just believe what I say. What I care about is actually just sharing these things because I'm passionate about them. And for the few of you who are really interested in becoming more conscious, you can take this information and actually apply it and really realize these truths for yourself. And a lot of these truths are extremely life transforming. Like, you cannot just go about your life in the same way once you're very conscious of the things that I'm going to be sharing with you in this video. In the same way that you don't have to believe in your hand because you're directly aware of it, it's the same thing with the things in this video. You can become directly aware of them so that you don't have to believe in them, right? If I'm asking you, does your hand exist? You don't have to believe me whether I say your hand exists or not. You could just be aware of your hand. Yeah, it's here. It's the same thing with these things. You don't need to adhere to any dogma or any authority figure. These are things you can become conscious of. So one really profound truth is how deeply our subjectivity impacts every single thing that we do. Our language, our thoughts, our beliefs, our motivations, our emotions, our perceptions, our senses. This bleeds into absolutely everything, including science. This bleeds into our entire worldview and experience of life. And speaking of experience, some things are just inherently subjective, like the taste of ice cream or the experience of a thought. And many people experience reality in vastly different ways. We grow up and we kind of just assume that everyone generally experiences reality in the same way. And, there's some truth to that, we can agree on certain things. But as people raise their consciousness, they will have a very different experience of reality than people who are at other levels of consciousness. People at different levels of development quite literally experience a different reality. They are conscious of different things, and because of this, there can be a huge miscommunication between people at different levels of consciousness. Different people can experience the present moment in a vastly different way. Their sense of reality and what is real and who and what they are existentially can be very different from what you experience. And some people experience reality in a more accurate way than others. Not everyone's experience is simply equal in the amount of truth that it holds. Some people's experiences are more accurate. They reflect the true nature of existence more than others. So this first truth is the influence of our subjectivity and the importance of just understanding subjectivity and the role that it plays within human existence. Our science really likes to just throw out subjectivity, which is a massive error. Our science likes to reduce all subjective phenomena to objective phenomena. It likes to boil down the experience of thoughts to just neurons firing off in the brain, or the taste of ice cream to just, once again, things happening in a brain. It doesn't really realize that subjective experience is distinct from anything happening in a brain. Your direct experience right now is distinct from objective phenomena. These are different dimensions of human existence, and you cannot reduce one to the other. You need to have different methods for properly investigating these different dimensions. You cannot reduce all subjective phenomena to objective and vice versa. These are different dimensions. The next truth is the interconnectedness of all things. Every single thing in the universe is interconnected. Each part affects every other part. And this is very obvious when you look within yourself. Your thoughts affect your emotions affect your thoughts, your physical health affects your thoughts and your emotions. Your relationships impact your health. Your career impacts your energy levels and your health. Government affects education. Education affects government. Education affects the medical system. Medical system affects government. Every single thing is interconnected. No thing is truly completely separate from any other thing. Recognizing the interconnectedness of all things brings an added sense of responsibility to your actual actions. When you realize that your actions ripple out and affect other things, this begins to shift your perspective on the things that you're doing. How does the work you do impact the world? How does how you treat other people impact the world? How does the clothes that you purchase, or how do the clothes you purchase and the food you buy impact the world? All of your actions are rippling out to affect various things. Moving on, this is pretty similar to the last point, is the illusion of separation. Separation is a mental construct. It does not exist whatsoever in the world. It's a complete illusion created by our minds so that we can survive. The appearance of having a strong sense of self separate from the environment is very useful for surviving, because now we can manipulate the environment, get what we want, and not really care otherwise. The very sense of being separate from others and the environment is an illusion. As you raise your consciousness, as your experience of life becomes more accurate, as your consciousness becomes more purified, this illusion of separation becomes clear and clear and clear and clear till it just fades away. You stop experiencing separation altogether. The appearance of separation holds survival value, which is distinct from what is true about the nature of existence. Moving on is another similar one, which is the illusion of duality. Reality is non-dual, meaning not two, non-dual. The illusion of things being separate or opposing forces is ultimately illusion, because there's no boundary separating any opposing force. They are all ultimately one. Our mind likes to divide reality into categories: good and bad, light and dark, self and other, and there's no separation occurring between any one of these. They're just distinctions that our minds create in order to navigate reality effectively in order to survive, because our minds are programmed for survival and not truth. What is true about the nature of existence is that everything is one. Everything is in a complete unity. Nothing exists separately or independently from anything else. Every single thing arises in a sort of co-constructive way. The environment can only exist in relation to a self, and the self can only exist in relation to other, right? Anything other than you can only exist in relation to you. These are all relative categories that our minds construct simply in order to make sense of reality so that we can navigate it. It holds survival value, which, once again, is distinct from truth. The next point is the power of belief. Your beliefs shape up your perceptions. They shape up a massive component of your experiences. Of course, they affect your decisions and your actions as well. And by really digging into your own beliefs, you can begin to experience reality in a very, very different way, since so much of your worldview and your whole sense of self and reality is founded upon beliefs that you haven't ever questioned and you're not even aware of, like the belief that you exist as a separate self, which we'll get into later in the video. But your beliefs have massive power. They construct so much of your life, and you aren't really aware of it because, one, no one has really taught you, and two, you don't really investigate it. Moving on is the illusion of self. You know, the self that you believe that you are? That's actually an illusion. The ego, the self, or your identity, these are synonymous, are nothing but a bunch of systems, a bunch of conditioning working together to create the cohesive sense of who you are. There is no objectively and independently existing entity called you. That's actually just a mental construct. When you really begin to grasp this, when this is how your consciousness and your experience of who you are is just kind of like wired to be, when you can actually see that your sense of self is fluid and changing and it's not a fixed, rigid thing, this can actually reduce your attachment to certain ego-related needs, increasing your well-being and allowing you to raise your consciousness even more. Lessening the attachment to the ego also allows you to see reality in a more accurate way, since your ego is always biased towards itself and its own survival and its own beliefs, its own mind, its own everything. When you can detach from it and be just simply aware of it, your ability to perceive reality in an accurate way increases. Your identity is constantly changing, and it has been influenced by external factors throughout your entire life. There's a very complex relationship between the self, well, which is ultimately an illusion, and the environment. The identity that you have right now is not the identity that you had 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Your identity actually evolves and shifts. There's this thing called ego development. The ego evolves. This is well known within psychology. Moving on is reality as a construct. A lot of the things that we believe just simply exist are actually mental and social constructs that we have invented. Never going to guess this one, in order to navigate reality effectively so that we can survive. Questioning a lot of these kinds of beliefs leads to the deconstruction of certain things that we really believed were true, and it allows us to just see reality once again in a more accurate way. The human mind is deeply, very deeply wired to delude itself and create a horribly inaccurate picture of reality just so that it can survive. The human mind is wired to be very biased towards its own survival agenda. And it's many of these very selfish mechanisms that skew our whole worldview. So a lot of what we consider reality to be is nothing more than mental, societal, cultural constructs. Moving on is the material world is an illusion. The material world that you experience through your senses is a projection of consciousness. Quantum physics shows that in very fundamental ways, matter behaves in ways that defy classical understanding. And in many ways, our quantum physics points to a deeper underlying reality. And even aside from all the quantum physics mumbo jumbo, you can become directly conscious through methods like Vipassana meditation, meditation retreats, self-inquiry, that the material world that you believe to be real is nothing more than actually a projection of consciousness, and that everything that we believe is real is made out of things that we cannot truly regard as real in the way that we typically like to. Everything that you see, hear, smell, touch, taste, all this stuff, this is all made out of empty consciousness, formless consciousness, no real substance whatsoever. Moving on is consciousness shapes reality. Consciousness is not a byproduct of brain activity, but reality itself is a byproduct of consciousness. Consciousness very actively shapes and influences our entire perception of reality. The very fundamental levels of what existence is, like the most fundamental, is quite literally made of your own consciousness. And there's only one consciousness. We all share the same one awareness. The universe is an alive and intelligent organism that is aware of itself. And the final one is that you are the source of creation. Or, in a very religious sounding way, you are God. The very source of creation is this right here. It's this experience right here. And you're not separate from any of it. I'm not saying that you, the ego, are the source of creation. What I'm saying is that the fundamental nature of existence exists in a complete unity with everything, and that is what you truly are. Your identification with the ego is like a game that your mind is playing in order to survive. And in a sense, once you go pretty deep into this work, you begin to appreciate the illusion of self, because if there wasn't such a strong illusion of self, you would just get enlightened. You just realize the truth and life wouldn't be very fun. So what reality fundamentally is, right? You can become conscious of that, and it's your true nature. It's your most true self. It's what you actually are. And when you're conscious of this, you can't go back to the old ways, right? I'm talking about a radical shift in human consciousness here in this video. If people are aware of every single one of these truths, this is a major jump in human consciousness, and we'll slowly make our way up until that point. But for now, we're kind of lost in certain delusions. And I really want to emphasize that I don't care if you believe me or not. That's not the point of this video. The point of this video is mainly me just sharing my excitement with people, and also to point out that you can become aware of them. every single thing I mentioned in this video, you can become directly conscious of. Thing is how deeply do you value truth? On a scale from 1 to 10, how deeply do you really value truth? And valuing truth can be very distinct from your survival agenda, your beliefs, your most deeply held and cherished beliefs, and just defending yourself. These can be two very different things, and often are, they really are two very different things. So that's it for this video. I'm offering one-to-one coaching. You can book a free call. Link is in the pinned comment and the description. Take it easy.